so much. It's a great presentation, and I think, you know, like biomedical waste is obviously a big problem. I don't have a biology background, so maybe you can help me understand a little bit more about, for this needle, how is it biodegradable enough that it, you know, biodegrades with time, but not enough that it doesn't start happening when it's filled with liquid or blood or whatever it is?
So as we mentioned before, this is the main ingredients. So starch and polylactic acid is the main ingredient. It's but also we also add like stabilizer and linking agents. Starch by itself is very like degradable. It degrades so fast. So as we mentioned before, it takes 2 to 12 weeks. Polylactic depend on type. Sometimes it degrades faster or degrades take a little longer. But combined of those, so when we use additive reagents, then we that is for more for R&D development. But eventually we'll find we can have it.
And then adding on to my colleague's point, depending on the type of needle, like you said, if we want a quick vaccination, we would most likely actually use more starch within the compound because it is more hydrophilic, which means that it absorbs more water. But if we want to use an IV needle that is stuck within the body for longer periods of time, we would probably increase the amount of polylactic acid as it is a little bit less hydrophilic and absorbs water a little bit less.
Okay, so you would need to know the purpose of that needle prior to manufacturing or, you know, allocating whatever it is. Okay. It is the actual needle part itself that, you know, goes into the body. Is that also going to be biodegradable?
Yes.
Okay.
One thing that I really like that you guys did is you highlighted the regulatory side of things, and I think you had a very realistic timeline, which I think most people who we see FDA approvals don't have a realistic timeline, and I think the way that you explained why you chose Australia is also a really salient point. Is there any research funding or grant funding that you thought about targeting as part of your R&D budget prior to going into venture?
Yeah, in terms of that, we hope to get possibly government grants. Maybe we talk with the Gates Foundation, who likes to work with the medical field in terms of finding revolutionary medical devices and new cures. And so hopefully through those grants, we are able to hopefully get even more funding.
And then how far along are you I mean, obviously this is for your pre-launch, but have you begun the R&D process at all from a bootstrap perspective, or is it kind of you guys thinking about, here's the possibilities of what we could do, and that's where you're at?
Yeah, so there was, Claire, if you want to.
So I have done researches about starch, and I have successfully made it into anti-adhesion materials. And I was just thinking of whether if starch could be possible to make into other materials like gel forms or even solid forms. So that was one idea we come up with of making needles. Yeah.
And there's actually some research papers based on polylactic acid and making it biodegradable and making it as a needle. So there is evidence and research backing up on that.
Thank you. So I am a biologist. I'm a biotech guy. Kind of a question and a comment. You know, there's a revenue line here. It's not, there's really two revenues you can think about, right? One is the replacement, displacement of existing needle technology, but the other one that is a real cost today, right, is the disposal of needles, right? And I work with a lot of hospital and providers, and every single one of them contracts with a disposal vendor, right? And I would think that those disposal vendors would actually be a customer of yours, because if your process can be cost effective, it lowers their costs, right? And you're not perceived as a competitor, but as a partner, right? Just kind of question. Have you thought about that?
Yeah, so we actually thought of having like a return program where we collaborate with these waste disposal companies, and we were actually thinking of implementing that, but that would be in the future after the next steps of R&D and everything else. Yeah.
Okay. And then speaking or looking at this as an investor, you know, I see two sides of this thing. you have a very high risk, but very high return business, right? If this is right, it's not just a home run, it's a grand slam. So, you know, one of the things that your invention or introduction of this technology can be highly, you know, disruptive to existing businesses. But it really is also an opportunity, and I would encourage you to think about your go-to-market strategy and look at all your existing competition, not as competition, but more as partners. This will get you traction much faster, and it's a lot better to make friends than enemies, right, in business. And then my last part is, I don't know how you came up with your budget, but just based on my experience in biotech, you're grossly underestimating the cost that it takes to get a patent, especially if you're thinking internationally, because international patents is governed by a whole different set of rules and regulations and qualifications. So you might want to revisit that part of it.
Yeah. So right now, I guess the patent cost that we put at the moment is $150,000, which is year 1 to year 2. This price that you do see in terms of negative profit is after the credit, the 43% cash refund credit, and so the R&D would more be like 1 to 2 million, and the trials would be closer even to 10 to 15 million, is in our estimation. But after the credit, we do see that. But we do understand that there are a lot of challenges on the way, unexpected costs, and so we will account for those.
So last one, I didn't hear the bell yet. Did I miss it? Okay. So last one, you know, you should really make me think about, and I didn't hear you address it, that whenever you talk about needles, you're really talking about 2 processes. It's extraction and injection. It's kind of assumed, but they're a very different business.
So to address that, because that's why we have one slide that show all the top uses of needles, and we highlight injection because right now we are very new business, new models. So we want to focus on one thing and we want to do it good first. Then after we do it good, and we move on to other uses. As you can see, our BIOJECT can do all of that. But right now we want to focus on one thing first, which is injection, and which is very important right now because injections get like COVID vaccine or everything vaccine. Then we want to focus on number 1 first.